Outlander star Sam Heughan has shattered hearts across the world with a deeply emotional letter that has left fans fearing for his health and holding their breath for answers. The Scottish actor, best known for his iconic portrayal of Jamie Fraser in the hit Starz series Outlander, took to social media to share what he described as the hardest thing I've ever had to write. In a message addressed tenderly to my beloveds, Heughan revealed he is currently writing from a hospital bed, describing a painful battle with both physical and emotional turmoil. You've never just been fans to me. You've been my soul's companions, my light in the darkest places, my family in spirit, Heughan wrote. That's why I owe you the truth, even when it hurts to share. The actor went on to describe a state of worsening health and profound heartbreak, admitting that each day has grown heavier and that he's been hiding his pain behind smiles for far too long. The pain, both physical and emotional, is unlike anything I've known, he confessed. It's a quiet storm inside me, born of heartbreak so deep it shook the very ground I stand on. In an unusually raw and vulnerable tone, Heughan reached out directly to his supporters, pleading for strength, prayers, and love. I need you. I need your strength, your prayers, your love, not just to heal, but to remember who I am beneath the sorrow, he wrote. Despite the darkness of his message, Heughan's words carried a fragile but powerful thread of hope. My heart is weary, but it still beats with hope, he wrote. And that hope? It's you. It always has been. Fans across social media have flooded the comments with messages of love and concern, many expressing shock at the revelation. Thousands have posted supportive messages using hashtags like We Love You Sam and Stay Strong Sam Heughan, as the Outlander community rallies around the actor who has given them nearly a decade of powerful performances and emotional connection. Heughan's letter closed with a heartfelt plea that felt more like a whisper from the soul than a celebrity statement. If I've ever moved you, made you smile, given you comfort in your hardest moments, then I ask you, from the deepest part of my soul, to hold me in yours now. Whisper my name into the quiet. Send light, send love, send whatever you believe in. Because right now, your love might be the very thing that keeps me breathing. As of now, Heughan has not disclosed the cause of his hospitalization or the nature of his illness, leaving fans anxiously waiting for updates. What remains clear, however, is that the beloved actor is enduring an incredibly personal battle, one that has drawn his worldwide fan base closer than ever before. When Sam Heughan steps onto the stage as Macbeth, the air in the other place crackles. With Leah Williams as a hauntingly intelligent Lady Macbeth, this RSC production turns Shakespeare's darkest play into something raw, modern, and dangerously intimate. Daniel Raggett's new production of Macbeth at the RSC's intimate Other Place arrives with two obvious headlines. Sam Heughan, best known to millions for Outlander, makes his RSC debut as the doomed Thane, and Leah Williams, a stage and screen veteran, is his lady. What the posters don't tell you is how insistently ugly and weird Raggett's vision is. This is less a domestic tragedy in the Scottish hills than a grubby, booze-sodden turf war staged in the kind of backstreet pub that smells faintly of old carpet and spilled lager. The RSC gives you the practical facts up front. Heughan and Williams headline the cast, Raggett directs, and the run continues through early December. But the company's blurb only begins to explain what you will actually see. Stripped-back reverence for Shakespeare's language married to a violently modern staging that repeatedly refuses sympathy. Right from the witch's first interventions, Raggett collapses distance. The supernatural opens not as mist and prophecy, but as a seance at the bar. The weird sisters are cast as streetwise crones and regulars, the kind who know too many names and hold grudges like currency. Designer Anna Reed's set, a cramped, low-lit pub ringed by onstage seating and practical lighting, does a lot of heavy lifting. Scattered chairs, an actual working bar, strip lights, and a stair to nowhere create a claustrophobic playing space in which anyone can be watched up close. This choice is audacious because The Other Place is, itself, intimate. Placing the audience in and around the action makes the violence physical and immediate in a way that a proscenium arch would not allow. The result is theater that feels like a confrontation rather than a story being narrated. The conceptual squeeze of a pub setting has benefits and costs. On the plus side, the tribal, hierarchical world Shakespeare sketches, thanes, retainers, the network of patronage, maps with uncomfortable ease onto gangland politics. The bargains and loyalties in Raggett's production are less feudal oaths than criminal economies. Control is enforced with fists, flick knives, and baseball bats, and Duncan's court becomes the planning room of a territorial boss. This modernization often clarifies motive. Macbeth's hunger for status becomes recognizable not as abstract ambition, but as a desire for security and dominance in a system that rewards cruelty. Critics and audiences have noticed that this transfer works in moments. The turf war shorthand simplifies complex feudal relationships into something spot-on and nasty. Yet that very move can blunt Shakespeare's lyricism. When the language is anchored to shabby banter and pub-room pragmatism, certain high-flown passages feel dislocated. There are scenes where the poetry soars against its staging. When Macbeth's soliloquies should open a cavern of interiority, the cramped set instead makes them look like boastful asides or strategic briefings. Several reviewers have commented that the concept risks reducing tragedy to brutality. Where Shakespeare invites us to mourn a great spirit undone, Raggett's line is often, "Look at how callous everyone is." That is a defensible editorial choice. One can stage Macbeth as a study in systemic violence, but it means this production will not satisfy viewers who expect the play's traditional tragic grandeur. Sam Heughan's Macbeth is the fulcrum on which this version pivots. There are two useful ways to think about his performance. First, Heughan brings physicality and star power. He is a robust presence given to broad gestures and a vocal force that can fill the other plays without amplification. That presence pays off in scenes that rely on intimidation or physical dominance. He convincingly reads as a man who can control a room. Second, and more interesting, is the decision to make Macbeth unusually proactive. In Raggett's world, Macbeth is less the hesitant conspirator who is pushed by Lady Macbeth and the witches, and more an agent who chooses brutality to secure his ascent. That shift alters the moral centroid of the play. Instead of seeing Macbeth primarily as a victim of his flaws and circumstances, we are asked to witness him as a calculating, sometimes merciless operator whose remorse arrives late and thin. Critics have praised his intensity and his capacity to make Macbeth credible as both a lover and a threat. They have also flagged moments of emotional distance, where the performance's muscularity can register as bluntness rather than complexity. Opposite Heughan, Leah Williams gives a Lady Macbeth that refuses easy caricature. Rather than a relentless scheming virago, Williams offers a character who is resourceful, brittle, and occasionally heartbreakingly small. She can command a room without bullying it. She can plot with a cool, appraising eye, and then, crucially, be vulnerable in unexpected, intimate moments. Raggett sometimes sidelines her, allocating more stage time to Macbeth's violent initiatives, but Williams ensures that when Lady Macbeth does occupy the center, she complicates any simple moral map. Her sleepwalking in this production is not a grand hallucination, but a tiny, private unraveling witnessed from the side of a crowded bar. Several reviews single her out as the emotional anchor of the play, a figure who lights up the production's darker tendencies without redeeming them. The supporting cast does sturdy work, and in a tight show like this, every minor role matters. Nicholas Carini's Banquo's quietly menacing, a presence that suggests resilience rather than fatalism. And Alec Newman's Macduff gives the revenge plot a raw, convincing grief. The witches, here doubled by a small ensemble, are less hogwash and more lived-in menace. They are the community's gossip and oracle in one, a chorus of low-level malice. The production's decision to collapse some minor parts and reassign beats, the porter becomes a blunt, no-nonsense figure rather than comic relief, helps sustain the tonal through line. This is a world without much humor. Those choices keep the drama taut, but they also make the play's bleakness feel unrelenting. One of the trickiest scenes in any modern Macbeth is the killing of Macduff's family. Raggett stages this moment without the poetic distance that sometimes softens its horror. In his production, it is a scene of ugly, almost documentary-like violence. That decision has provoked divided responses. For some viewers, the unflinching depiction is necessary. It makes Macbeth's moral culpability undeniable because he participates directly, and it forces the audience to reckon with the tangible consequences of political violence. For others, the choice is gratuitous, an escalation that tips the production into spectacle rather than meaning. This is, to be blunt, theater that tests your appetite for cruelty. The more you tolerate the exposure, the more the production will reward you with clarity. The less you do, the more you may feel alienated. Musically and visually, Raggett leans on atmosphere. The sound design amplifies the pub's hum, clinking glasses, distant televisions, the low throb of bass, and scenes often slip into near silence to let text land harshly. Lighting, by the design team, is a mood engine. Strip bulbs and overhead fans throw faces into sudden relief or swallow them in shadow. There are moments of striking theatrical cunning, a death staged offstage but felt in the room, or an arrival of the witches that turns a corner of the set into a tableau of dread that demonstrate Raggett can sculpt potent theatrical moments from small-scale means. Yet the aesthetic consistency can also feel monomaniacal. Once you accept the pub conceit, the production seldom surprises you beyond variations on the same palette. Thematically, Raggett's Macbeth is preoccupied with accountability. By making Macbeth active in his villainy, and by positioning the action in a morally bankrupt social microcosm, the play asks whether an individual's culpability increases or diminishes when the social order itself is brutal. Is Macbeth monstrous because he is a product of a violent ecosystem, or is he monstrous because he chooses violence when gentler paths might have been available? The production seems to answer both. It suggests structural causes without letting them exculpate individual choice. That is a difficult stance to stage. It can feel didactic if not handled with empathy, but Raggett's production mostly avoids sermonizing through the sheer force of its theatrical choices. Whether that force convinces you will depend on whether you come to the evening wanting poetic metaphysics or forensic moral scrutiny. Audience response in the other place tends to be intense. The proximity of the actors means reactions ripple through the room, and the laughter, gasps, and silence feel communal and immediate. The RSC's gamble to populate this production with a famous screen star like Heughan is obvious and mostly pays off. His name brings attention and ticket buyers, but the casting is not merely commercial casting by name. Heughan's physicality and screen-trained awareness translate well to a tight stage, and Williams' pedigree ensures the play's emotional fidelity is never compromised. That said, star casting does raise questions about expectation. Heughan draws a certain fandom who may arrive primed to admire rather than scrutinize, and for purists, the new setting and tonal brutality may feel like an unnecessary retread. Still, the production is honest about what it is, an experiment in seeing Macbeth as urban, bleary, and inescapably corporeal. If Raggett's production has a blind spot, it is a relative lack of tonal breathing space. Macbeth without respite becomes exhausting. There are stretches where the production's relentlessness overrides nuance, and the audience's empathy with individual characters is sacrificed to the maintenance of an atmosphere. A play that in other hands promises aching psychological vertigo can here read as a sequence of pitched scenes in which the human music is occasionally muffled. That is not to say the evening lacks moments of real emotional impact. Williams' Lady Macbeth can stop you dead, but the accumulation of bleakness risks dulling those peaks. Ultimately, this RSC Macbeth is a production of appetite and appetite's consequences. It is designed to be felt in the body as much as heard with the ear. The set, the sound, the proximity create a sensory pressure cooker that insists you make a moral judgment. That pressure produces theater that is often electrifying, occasionally repellent, and always specific. If you go hoping for a classical, ceremonious Macbeth that preserves Shakespeare's metaphysical grandeur, you will likely leave disappointed. If instead you are curious about a director taking the play as a social and visceral drama and are willing to endure or to appreciate its brutality, Ragged Staging will repay you with a show that is both immediate and haunting. Bring your appetite for rawness and your tolerance for sustained bleakness. Sam Heughan gives a committed, powerful central performance. Leah Williams makes Lady Macbeth an unforgettable study in wounded control. The production's concept is bold and well executed in its way, an argument for why Shakespeare still rewards radical rethinking, but it will not please everyone. That, perhaps, is the point. Great theater does not always console. Sometimes it forces you to look, unflinching, at the uglier mechanics of power. Raggett's Macbeth does that with style, heat, and yes, a good deal of blood. Macbeth runs at the Royal Shakespeare Company's The Other Place through 6 December. Running time is approximately 2 hours and 35 minutes, including interval. Director Daniel Raggett takes Shakespeare's play and relocates it from the misty moors of Scotland to a gritty, late 20th century-style Glasgow pub gangland. The set, designed by Anna Reid, recreates the bar setting with onstage seating, a working bar, strip lights, overhead fans, and a floor that feels neglected underfoot. The choice of the smaller, intimate theater space of The Other Place amplifies the immediacy of the action. The audience is on all sides, and the world of power, violence, and ambition is less a mythic castle and more a room you could walk into. From the opening, the production sets a tone of menace. The witches are not robed figures of otherworldly prophecy, but drink-soaked, streetwise women leaning over the bar. The tools of murder include hammers and kitchen instruments, and the violence is up close. This conceptual shift has several advantages. The Thanes become gang bosses, the alliances and treacheries feel like turf wars, and Macbeth's ambition reads less as medieval feudalism and more as ruthless street politics. But the shift is not without its costs. When the language is heroic, poetic, and metaphysical, the grime and banter of a pub scenario can undercut some of those moments. One critic writes, "The setting robs the narrative and language of all its majesty." So one's response to the show may depend on whether one is seeking Shakespeare's tragedy in a classical forge or a post-industrial battleground. Sam Heughan as Macbeth. In his RSC debut, Heughan brings a physical, charismatic presence, broad-shouldered, confident, capable of dominating the space. He has said playing Macbeth feels like a full-circle return to the stage. In this production, he is more proactive than traditional Macbeths. He takes the initiative, drives the action, and becomes personally responsible for many of the dirty deeds, rather than being mostly pushed by fate or by Lady Macbeth. Some viewers found that invigorating. Others found moments lacked nuance. He's incessantly pumped up. Any subtlety or hint of frailty is lost. Leah Williams as Lady Macbeth. Williams delivers a Lady Macbeth who is both strategist and survivor. Clear-headed, calculating, and then increasingly haunted. Several reviews single her out for depth and emotional credibility. The production gives her extra silent scenes of introspection which deepen her role. Supporting cast and ensemble. The rest of the company hold up the world credibly. Nicholas Karimi as Banquo brings quiet menace, Alec Newman as Macduff gives grief and rage texture, and the three witches ground the supernatural in the everyday. The relocation highlights certain thematic tensions, ambition and brutality, the interplay of individual choice and structural violence, and the way power corrupts regardless of era. Staging Macbeth as gangster trauma rather than royal court tragedy foregrounds how ordinary systems of power can destroy lives. The design and sound emphasize dread. Television static, drones, a hum of menace beneath the drink and banter. In particular, the production asks when the system itself is violent, how much responsibility lies with the individual who chooses to kill? Macbeth is shown as someone who not only is given power, but takes power by force, arguably making the darkness of his doom more of his own making. The production is bleak, very bleak, and many reviews mention its relentlessness. The theater becomes a pressure cooker of fear and dread, rather than a space for quiet reflection. This means it may be exhilarating for some, exhausting for others. The intimacy of the venue makes the murder, The guilt, the terror, visceral. When Macbeth dispatches a child with a hammer, you feel it. Williams' Lady Macbeth gives one of the more affecting portrayals of the character in recent years. The set and lighting operate as character. The pub becomes hellish. The modernization isn't superficial. The gangland analogy helps sharpen the stakes. Some of the poetic grandeur of Shakespeare's language is submerged by the rougher world. Majesty is lost, as one critic writes. The relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth occasionally lacks chemistry. The direction prioritizes Macbeth's agency, which sidelines her. The violence, though effective, may push beyond some viewers' comfort zone. One reviewer described the show as biting too far into brutality. For purists expecting a timeless regal tragedy, the pub setting may feel incongruous or reductive. This production of Macbeth at the RSC is fearless. It reimagines Shakespeare's play not as an epic of kings and witches in the hills, but as a brutal turf war in a hostile underworld. It forces you to see the characters as flawed people in a broken system. For those ready to be challenged to confront Macbeth's ambition as raw power rather than poetic folly, this staging delivers powerfully. However, if you come seeking the sweeping tragedy, the elevated language, the distance that allows mythic beauty, you may feel the ruggedness overwhelms the poetry. The spectacle of violence may outpace the tragedy of downfall. It is a production of appetite and consequence, not consolation. This Macbeth is not for the faint of heart. It asks more than it gives, but gives a lot in return if you engage. Heughan and Williams make a compelling central pair. The design and staging are audacious, and the production reminds us that Shakespeare can still surprise and unsettle us in 2025. When the Royal Shakespeare Company announced that Sam Heughan, global star of Outlander, would take on Macbeth in the company's most intimate venue, the other place, theater chatter ignited overnight. Within hours of the announcement, tickets were gone, waiting lists grew, social media turned into a pilgrimage planning board. Fans of the Scottish actor imagined romance and Highland nobility. Those who know their Shakespeare suspected something grimmer was coming. They were right. Daniel Raggett's new staging is not a heritage revival, but a descent into a smoky, brutal, modern underworld. A lock-in at Hell's Own Pub where the taps run red and the floor sticks underfoot. The other place, tucked behind the RSC's main theaters in Stratford-upon-Avon, has always been a laboratory. It seats barely 200, the audience on all sides, the actors within reach. Raggett and Anna Reid use that closeness to suffocating effect. The space has been rebuilt as a dilapidated bar, nicotine walls, neon tubes, scuffed tables, optics of whiskey bottles glinting in the half-light. There's no stage audience divide. You're part of the pub crowd, watching a kingdom collapse over the jukebox hum. It's an arresting image. The world's most famous Scottish tragedy transplanted to a late-night drinking den somewhere between Glasgow and Purgatory. The witches, instead of ethereal hags, are locals perched on stools, gossiping and stirring doom into their pints. Duncan is the gangland boss, his thanes loyal lieutenants. The crown is metaphorical control of the bar, the turf, the business. For some, this is heresy. For others, revelation. The pub as metaphor works because it's a place where hierarchies shift fluidly, alliances form and break, and truth blurs in alcohol's haze. Reed's design traps everyone in that moral fog. The result is claustrophobic and unnervingly believable. The self-made killer. Sam Heughan strides on in dark jeans and leather, the swagger of a man who knows he's admired and fears it may be the only thing keeping him afloat. From the outset, his Macbeth is not the hesitant soldier of some traditional readings, but an ambitious tactician already weighing the odds. The prophecy doesn't ignite him so much as confirm an instinct he's long suppressed. Heughan's screen fame might have been a risk, the danger of celebrity glare overwhelming the play, but his performance earns its place. There's charisma to burn. The voice, rich and gravelly. The body language, physical, restless, always prowling. Yet he resists vanity. His Macbeth sweats, swears, bleeds. This is a man who kills not because demons drive him, but because violence is the only currency he trusts. Critics have divided over his subtlety. Some claim he never quite lets us into Macbeth's psychological collapse. Others find that restraint precisely what makes him compelling. In the confined pub, he's forced to play smaller, to think and react in real time. When he mutters, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, he doesn't declaim. He lets the line dissolve into the smoke of his own exhaustion, a man too tired even to perform remorse. The RSC's gamble pays off commercially. Heughan brings new audiences, but artistically too. His stardom becomes part of the narrative, a famous face performing the corrosion of fame itself, ambition eating through admiration. Opposite him, Leah Williams is magnetic. Her Lady Macbeth begins with calm precision, eyes sharp, gestures economical. She's a woman who's long studied how power behaves and intends to master it. There's no shrillness, no caricature. Instead, quiet intelligence and a controlled desperation that cracks only when it's too late. Raggett's direction gifts her 4 silent interludes,